Snow Rally was the next event, which meant the Wisps had to participate in another individual event. With the 3 other individual marbles failing at getting anything higher than 8th, management decides to throw in Wispy. This is an opportunity for some much needed momentum for the team, especially after their 2 previous slumps. The Snow Rally had a very interesting scoring. They would race twice and give Snow Rally points for each race. They would add the total from both races and use average times as tiebreakers. Race 1 started off greatly for the Wisps. They were in the top 3 with the O'Rangers and the Speeders. It's hard to tell what happened to the team as the Speeders got a big lead and they were the only ones on camera. But at this little camera right here, it looked like the Wisps were in 3rd. They would end up dropping 2 more spots and they finished the first race in 5th, earning 12 Snow Rally points. Now, Race B was much better. Wispy jumped out to the lead and held it for almost the entire race. Almost. As they were approaching the line, Wispy took a big bump that actually looked beneficial at first, but it would end up harming the marble, as Wispy gained so much speed that he was unable to see the bumps that could stop him. And one bump did stop him. The bump was so bad that Wispy fell to 3rd and nearly to 4th.
Can they hold on to it? Watch that 3rd place. Mulberry's going to get it. Snowball steals 2nd right at the line by just about a 2nd, just behind Team Mulberry.
Luckily, their total Snow Rally points were 26. They got bronze. They lost out by 1 point to the Speeders for silver. Kinda ironic. The Wisps were now down on the leaderboard by 21. Next up would be the snowboard cross event, another individual event. They looked to keep the momentum going from the last event, and they kinda did that. Wispy was the one to go, and they didn't do too bad. Another top half finish at 6th. The only bad news was the team on top, this time the Speeders, finished ahead of them. They were now 23 points out of 1st, still within a gold medal. Wispy gave some thoughts on their performance, saying, quote, "I thought I did very well to keep the momentum going. I finished close enough so that we were just 1 medal away. We got another team event coming. We must improve from our last outing." They would indeed improve from their 16th place, but not by much. The Midnight Wisps would face off against the Hazers in the first round of curling. They did great to start off, a 3-0 lead to start off the matchup.
Now, off the far wall and the back, into the house, and that'll be another 2. Establishing yourself.
After the Hazers got close and made it 3-2, Wispy came in clutch and made it 5-2.
Hazers, I think, make the right choice in this one, trying to get a 2-pointer, but the Midnight Wisps respond and go back up by 3.
When the final Hazer came up, the Wisps led by 3. It seemed like there was virtually no way they could blow it. But they did. Misty was the final Hazer, and he came in clutch for this team.
Deep back part of the house. And the Hazers knocks one of the Wisps out. That'll even up the score just a little bit, but it's not going to be enough.
The Midnight Wisps finished in 10th. But surprisingly, the Wisps didn't lose any points on the leaders. That's how inconsistent every single team was. A bottom half finish didn't change anything for the Midnight Wisp, which is pretty crazy. Sitting at 9th, still just 23 points away from the leaders. It is now time for the Wisp we all know to show up. The miracle was coming. The final 3 events of the Marble League were the biathlon, ice hockey, and the sand mogul race. And it's time for things to get crazy. The Wisps were the 3rd team to go, and their time was very good. It carried them even though they didn't get the best placement on the board. They settled into 1st after that time, but 3 others would actually pass up the Wisps instead. Those teams were the Crazy Cat's Eyes, who actually broke the record, the Thunderbolts, and the O'Rangers. The bad news was that the Bolts and O'Rangers were ahead of the Wisps, meaning they would be moving up along with the Wisps. Both would end up moving into the top 5, while the Wisps actually moved down a spot rather than up. they were now 10th. But they still managed to gain a point on the leaders. It was now a 22-point deficit between their team and the Oceanics. There were 13 teams that were still in it to win it. There were a lot of possibilities that could happen, but we all know which team was favored. Event 11 was ice hockey. Wispy talked about how this was the main event they've been preparing for, saying, quote, "Our collision performance was pretty average last year. We've been preparing for this one the most, as we knew it would be important down the stretch. So, it's time for the event." The Wisps were in Group A. The first matchup with the Pinkies showed promise. It seemed like they had a very good defense that would lead the way. Their next match with the Snowballs would prove that theory. They shut them out, while they only scored 1 goal. Their final matchup was with the Savage Speeders, a team that was in the top 3. This match would end up being their only loss of the whole event.
Oh, but another one goes!
In the elimination rounds, they would first face Team Momeri. It was a callback to their matchup last year, which ended fatally. The Wisps once again showed off their defense, and they shut out their opponents while only scoring once themselves. They focused heavily on their defense and only allowed 2 goals once so far. In the semifinals, they once again scored once, but Team Galactic scored on them too, meaning a rematch would commence.
Again, we get a goal over on the far side. Wisps are going to advance.
In the final, they shut out the Minty Maniacs to win gold.
And they give up none. That's about as well as you can do. Look at that, sending 3 pucks immediately.
The gold medal brought the team to 4th, and now they were just 6 points away from being the champions. And 9 other teams could still win it all. It was going to be a tough battle, and Wispy would be the one going in the San Myogo race. Ten teams had the chance to win the championship. That's the largest number ever heading into the final event. It's time we take a look at every heat, not just the Wisps heats, to see how these contenders do. In the first heat, the O'Rangers and Snowballs were racing. Both were still in championship contention, but after the heats, they would not be. The O'Rangers were knocked out by not advancing, and the Snowballs were knocked out because of later teams advancing. That leaves only 8 contenders for the championship. Heat 2 saw 3 championship contenders race: the Hazers, Oceanics, and Crazy Cat's Eyes. By the end, only one of them would be eliminated. A clutch move by Smoggy helped him, and the Oceanics moved on.
Cat's Eye with a brief lead. Now the Oceanics take it back. Minty Maniacs in second. They lose out. Watch on the near side, and the Hazers sneak by and take the win.
The Crazy Cat's Eyes would be the only ones out of this heat eliminated. 6 other contenders were left besides the Wisps. 2 championship contenders were in Heat 2, the Savage Speeders and the Balls of Chaos, and both of them would advance. But because of specific teams advancing, the Balls of Chaos were out of contention. One less on the chopping block. Now, Heat 4, we finally see our good old friends the Wisps again. Besides themselves, there were 2 other contenders in the heat. In the race, the Wisps would triumph over the rest and win the heat.
Wisps. Down they come. Midnight Wisps out in front. Raspberry Racers off to the high side. They can't get there and will finish in second. The Midnight Wisps, a good victory, and they had to do a little bit of blocking on that.
Now the Thunderbolts were out once they were eliminated, but the Raspberry Racers were also out of contention too. By this point, 6 teams were eliminated from contention. 4 remained, and now it's time for the semifinals. Semifinal A only saw 1 of those 4, the Oceanics, but they would be eliminated themselves. They were actually still in contention, however, if a few things went right. Spoiler alert, they didn't. Semifinal B had the other 3 contenders. 1 was guaranteed to move on, but 2 would end up moving on. The Savage Speeders and the Midnight Wisps.
Second, they fend off a challenge. Can they get up there? Midnight Wisps take the win, and they will advance. They could have stayed there. They didn't have to make that last second lunge to get it.
They were the only ones left. If the Wisps wanted to win, they needed to beat the Speeders. Wispy, a marble that had never podiumed, had the chance of a lifetime, and I'm proud to say they would execute on that chance.
Who will win the Marble Olympics? Off they go. Midnight Wisps out to a big lead right off the bat. Can anybody fight back? Savage Speeder's going to try it, but it's not going to work. The Midnight Wisps have done it. They needed just 2 gold medals and 3 bronze, but they have won the 2018 Winter Marble Olympics.
With 2 gold medals in the final 2 events, the Midnight Wisps had completed one of the most incredible championship wins ever. They beat the Speeders by 1 point, the closest margin possible. After an outstanding rookie season, this year showed that they were willing to better themselves, that they were willing to take their best opportunity when it presented itself. There was never a moment when they gave up. They fought hard, knowing that there was still a chance. It's an incredible year that will never be forgotten, and it'll always be remembered as the Midnight Miracle.